Join me, and I will give you the tools to help you carry out your vision.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Ironheart Season 1, Episodes 1 through 3. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek. We're going to share our overall thoughts, and then we'll talk about some of the plot details that happened during this season, or these few episodes of the season. I do, again, want to give a shout-out to the decodingtv.com newsletter. If you want to read a review and recap of this, subscribe at decodingtv.com. It is free. Patrick Klepek, obviously Ironheart has had a very troubled production. A variety of reasons that we don't need to get into fully in detail right now. And it's all actually covered at decodingtv.com if you want to read about it. But you and I were very apprehensive about this show. Been delayed a few times. Feels like they didn't know what direction they wanted to go in. The show is finally here. What do you think of the first 3 episodes of Ironheart?
David, I want to be a contrarian. I want to be on the other side. I want to say that I liked this show more than I did. But 3 episodes in, it's a real jumble. It's a lot of ideas. I don't see a lot of them working together. Frankly, it feels like 2 different shows, like everything involving Riri Williams and everything involving Ezekiel. Insert the character's last name so I don't talk about that up front. I love all that stuff, like incredible chemistry. Would love to watch sort of a road series about these 2 characters discovering themselves and who they are in this world. Everything involving like the quote villains just falls completely flat despite liking many of the actors involved. It feels like a show without an identity. It feels like a show from hopefully what we'll look back at as a different era of Marvel that was like, we just have to make a ton of stuff. What can we pull from like people are going to watch stuff on TV and see it in the movies and vice versa. And hopefully we're moving past that to something that's more akin to just make stuff because you've got a good idea and figure out how all that fits together neatly as you go along. Because what you end up here is a lot of talented people making what is ultimately a real mess of a show. Good ideas, interesting ideas, but practically none of it really worked for me. How about you?
Well, I do want to just call out what you just said. Actually, we should have talked about this during our TV news segment at the Decoding TV podcast, but let's mention it now. I don't know if you saw these remarks from James Gunn that he gave to Rolling Stone about the MCU TV stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to not read a James Gunn interview like every 15 minutes at the moment. But I have seen his various comments. But which one in particular are
in an interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Rolling Stone asked him, over at Marvel, they've been pretty open about the fact that they've realized what's gone wrong over the past few years. They put out too much stuff. James Gunn says, yes, and longtime Marvel executive producer Louis D'Esposito said that privately to me. I don't even know if it's really their fault. Rolling Stone says they were under a corporate mandate. Yeah. James Gunn says that wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And it killed them. End quote. And it killed them. That's what they put out too much stuff. And I do feel as though Ironheart is a kind of the tail end of, that mandate kind of dying off. Is we got to make a Wakanda Forever and then introduce a character in there, and then it's going to go and got to make a TV show out of her and so on.
You can imagine the pitch in your head, right?
Yes.
Like you can see like the pitch deck and like, here's how these are going to connect. Right. And like the movie comes out and then the year after there's a TV show and then she's going to appear in the Marvels or whatever. You see the vision board of how it's all going to work. And we've also watched it more or less completely fall apart over the last couple of years.
I am surprised that you are so negative about this show because I actually think it's one of the best Marvel shows we've seen. and that is to say, I think it is fine, right? I actually agree with everything you said. Let's talk about some of the things that are really good about the show, okay? I want to talk about some of the things that are really good about the show. First of all, I think the show looks great.
Yep.
It looks better than many Marvel films. I'm going to put that out there. For one thing, the colors in the show are really vibrant. I know that sounds like I'm damning with faint praise, but I'm not. Like, a lot of Marvel movies are shot in this very desaturated style, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about why that's the case and get into that. But the show looks great. it has a sense of place. It does look like they actually shot in Chicago. In fact, they shot mostly in Atlanta and did the exteriors in Chicago, but still, like, they actually made the effort to.
I didn't know that. The moment they
Yeah.
said I was like, oh, everyone references Chicago, but they never set the shows in Chicago. But between The Bear and Ironheart, I'm actually sort of feasting at the moment with
Yes.
shows that are doing their best to feature the city in a meaningful way. So
as a Chicago, as a Chicago adjacent resident, do you feel like it is meaningfully capturing Chicago in any way?
Not quite like The Bear. It's more Chicago dressing in Ironheart more
Sure.
than The Bear. But they're aiming for different things. But I don't think Ironheart is meaningfully trying to capture different elements of Chicago, and it does warm my heart to see different characters with Chicago Cubs or Chicago Bears gear on. Like, I wasn't ready for that. I'm sitting there watching, like, I did not realize this show was going to be set here and have that different kind of iconography. So it works, but I think it uses Chicago as a backdrop more than it's using it as a like true character. But that, like, I'll take that, because it's rare that Chicago even gets to just be a backdrop to a show. like that is like, even when it's featured in films, like it was over parts of like the Nolan Batman trilogy, it's like, well, shot in Chicago, but we're not going to call it Chicago. We're going to use the train system from Chicago because it looks iconic, but it's going to be so it's I'll take Chicago just kind of being there. It's like, look, we put the Chicago logo up. That's fine. I'll take it. Like, that's good enough for me. So it works, and I found that to be a very pleasant surprise as a person just outside the city.
While talking about aesthetics, I think the soundtrack is awesome. Like, just some really great needle drops throughout the whole show.
Title cards. I mean, like, some of the coolest
cool
title cards in for like every intro. Like, it makes me like the first 5 minutes is really exciting. Like, what's the little goofy gimmick they're gonna have to like say Ironheart? And they've all three of them so far on the show have been like really good and made me chuckle.
The most important part, Dominique Thorne is good as Riri Williams. Like, I just think she is a great actor. She has great chemistry with all the other actors. And she's somebody you kind of want to root for.
Mm-hmm.
Not kind of, definitely want to root for. I mean, I say kind of because the character makes some really, really awful decisions.
Well, she's stuck in a bad. She's like a good actor, interesting character stuck in a bad show, right? Like, or a mediocre show,
right? And okay, so those are some nice things about the show. There's some tie-ins with the MCU that are kind of fun that we can get into momentarily.
Other thing I do like. I know that your friend of mine, Jeff Kanata, one of his big problems with the depiction of a lot of stuff in the MCU,
nanotech.
Iron Man in particular, is nanotech. I know it's one of your hang-ups as well.
Yes,
I think
nanotech sucks.
Right. It's just a cheat code visually to like not do something as interesting as what actually happens in this show. It feels like they make a very conscious decision to have the suits and like feel like mechs, like feel like robots, like have like real life to them and design to them, feel built. How do they work? How do you get in it? How do you get out of it? Like, all of that feels thought of in Ironheart in a way that I really appreciated, because that was lost in the MCU as the Stark storyline went along.
It's lost when Robert Downey Jr. has $1 billion and he wants to, and he's making his like 10th MCU film, and he wants to show up to set and not need to wear the uncomfortable armor. So they're just like, we'll just nanotech it on afterwards, right? Like, we don't need to. Well, obviously, I honestly think that leads to how shitty it looks in the MCU. Like, a lot of just these stars wanting to show up and have an easy life and easy job, I think accounts for a lot of this nanotech stuff. It's unclear how much of the time they're even on set wearing a suit. Like, a lot of times it's just voiceover. It's just a whole completely CG creation. I agree with everything you said, Patrick. This is a show with a lot of ideas. What does it mean to create an AI version of your dead friend? What does it mean to try to be a Black woman who's pursuing STEM and trying to have a breakout career given the challenging circumstances that she grew up in? What does it mean to like tie into the broader MCU in the ways that it does?
What does it mean to? It does, but does it address like the systemic gun violence that like is a huge plague in Chicago? But like we're gonna reference it, and it's a huge like emotional.
Are we gonna meaningfully address it?
No,
or
we're not.
About it anyway?
We're not. At least certainly halfway through the show, it's just gonna be a slow motion like thing. We're gonna, and that doesn't feel. I know Coogler didn't write this. I know he didn't direct it, but he was an executive producer on it. He was.
He has been out in front. He's been promoting it. He's like really proud of it, So
it just feels like the kind it's like not to be dismissive of anyone involved in the show who obviously made it under challenging circumstances and corporate edicts, and like there's a reason this feels like a rough draft as a show of like a first pass, and then they just had to make it and make do. But like something like that, where it's like you're going to set it in Chicago, you're going to have a character who is hugely defined by gun violence in a city that struggles with that, but not actually talk about that in any meaningful way, feels like a show not knowing what it wants to do with the subject matter that has. And that even extends to the questions about, I was like, oh man, like your brain like thought about your dead friend, revive them as an AI. What do you do with that emotionally? That's
what are the implications of that?
That's rich. That's really interesting.
I have zero confidence that it will be addressed like or explored in any meaningful way in the final 3 episodes.
I don't think so.
There's so much plot in the show. I mean, we've seen 3 episodes. There's 2 heists in 3 episodes.
I know
that happened, right? And so it's
why are we doing any of those heists? I don't.
Unclear. Okay, and Anthony Ramos, the whole thing going on is like, what's the deal with his crew and so on? And there is an Elon Musk type character in the show that they try to take down in this Robin Hood-esque way where they're robbing from the rich and giving to the poor and so on. So there's like tons of ideas. I have no confidence that any of them will be meaningfully explored or brought to any like thematically satisfying in any way, given how the show's been going and given we only have three episodes. It's not like a 12 episode season, right? There's only 3 more episodes after.
They're long episodes though. Like I will like that was we did not get access to them early and we're trying to figure out when to watch them. And at first I pitched David, I'm like, well, maybe I could watch it all on Tuesday night and then we could record late. And he was like, well, the episodes are like kind of almost an hour each, which is interesting because that is pretty different than a lot of the Marvel television shows, which they're
taking from the Andor playbook,
right?
Like they're dropping a whole movie every week.
And I'm the first to admit that I generally think that in the streaming era shows are too long, but I think like a common complaint with a lot of the Marvel stuff is, well, it's expensive, so the episodes feel shorter arbitrarily as opposed to because they're like taking advantage of the form. And here you're getting lengthy episodes with a lot of visual effects that look movie quality. There's like nothing cheap looking about this show.
Yeah, it looks great.
That doesn't mean that it, like the action like is any good. The fight choreography not doing a lot for me in the show, but I think that just speaks to the show itself feeling just not very tight, not aware of like what it wants to be and what it wants to say. And it's only gotten more convoluted over the first 3 episodes. And like, well, we don't have time to address any of the stuff that came up in the first 3 because you're clearly just setting up a bunch more in the back half that you're going to end up just dealing with that for 3 more episodes.
Right. Well, Patrick Klepek, let's talk about what actually happens in these episodes. I want to remind people when we last left Riri Williams in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, she was an MIT scientist who'd helped design a vibranium detector. And she also had built an Iron Man-like suit to help the Wakandans in a battle against Namor. And I do want to say this recap I'm going to read from is from Wikipedia, but also like I'm pulling from my own notes as well. So it's like going to be a fusion of the two. But in episode 1, Riri Williams' request for MIT to extend her grant for another year is denied. And she is expelled from the school after Dean Choi and Professor Wilkes note her helping other students in schools plagiarize their work in exchange for money. Riri takes off in her new suit of armor to her hometown of Chicago, where she's still grieving the deaths of her best friend Natalie Washington and stepfather Gary from a drive-by shooting. Riri shares with Natalie's brother Xavier on how she wants her talents to be taken seriously. She's recruited by John to join the gang of his cousin Parker Robbins, also known as the Hood. Initially denying his offer to join their next 3 heists, she relents when Robbins offers financial compensation. Riri's grieving during her brain mapping of her artificial intelligence leads to a digital creation of Natalie being made that then communicates with her through holograms. End quote. So that's a lot of what happens in the first episode of the show. I want to comment on a few things that happened in this episode, right? First of all, this is I realized, Patrick, while watching this, why this show and others like it feel so ridiculous, right?
All right.
And specifically, this is, I think, the second show, MCU show, in which the topic of money has become really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to be honest, in my opinion, the topic of money would not be, in my opinion, and people can disagree, the way that money is depicted in these shows, specifically Falcon and the Winter Soldier and this show. And I know it's like they both have black protagonists, and I don't think that's an accident, but at the same time, the way money is depicted feels completely implausible to me in both of these shows. On the one hand, you have Falcon and the Winter Soldier, who like is trying to raise money for their boat or whatever. And it's like, if Falcon and the Winter Soldier started a Patreon, if Falcon and the Winter Soldier started a Substack, if he launched subscriptions on Instagram, like these people are like Falcon in particular is like mega, one of the most famous people in America. Like it is,
and Riri knows the Wakandans, right? Like the
Yeah,
most valuable resource in the world.
They can't hook her up a little bit, like
It's the part where like the boys, which is obviously deeply cynical about like a cynical take on what would people like this do if they had this kind of power in the world. But what would they do is like they'd have like brand deals and like sponsored posts on Instagram and publicists. And there's a world where like these characters could have extensions of that. Like the way they try to ground them like regular humans, it just does not like you want to do it as an extension of like these characters are black. I can fully believe that despite like being involved in like saving world altering events, like that would still inform how people look at you, react to you, especially in the lens of like Captain America, like a white Captain America. Like still like you can explore how they are treated as a result of how people view them. But the idea that like they couldn't find enough money for their funding project like betrays a belief to get you to a story setup that feels implausible in the universe that you have.
I agree. It's more believable in this show because Falcon and the Winter Soldier is like he's older than Riri Williams. Riri Williams is theoretically like in college.
He's basically an Avenger.
Yeah, he's basically an Avenger. So it's like it makes no sense in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It makes a little more sense here.
Yes,
but she says things like, "Oh, like I also am brilliant, but I'm not like Tony Stark. I don't have $1 billion." It's like. Tony Stark didn't necessarily always have $1 billion. Like he launched successful products and then sold them, and then which you also have the ability to do, Riri Williams. Anyway, I know I'm like, I don't want to get into like conservative talking points about pulling yourselves up by your bootstraps, but I'm just like, it just doesn't make any sense to me that somebody this like literally a generational talent who can put together literally weapons, which is probably one of the most in demand items in the world right now. Would have difficulty finding money. So that's just like,
I mean, that gets to a point that I like. The show brings up in a show full of like ideas that I wish it would actually explore. She talks about how she views the legacy of Iron Man and Tony Stark, which is like, look at this really smart guy that could build things, and what he did was safety. What he did was weapons. Like, I want to help people, and the premise of the show opens with like her trying to build these technologies that would like make response times like to get to people in need essentially zero, and the lives you could save as a result of that. I was like, oh, like the idea that this young girl like looks up to Tony Stark and what he did, but like intellectually, philosophically disagrees with the intentions of that genius. Like, I don't have any familiarity with the comic character. I don't know what like where they take that character in different appearances in the comics, but that's something, and that's an interesting way to take advantage of a long interconnected world where you want an Iron Man like figure in it. It's like, yeah, I mean, like the suit's cool, but like fuck that guy, kind of. You know what I mean? Like
right.
a little
No, that's
bit.
fair. That's fair. Yeah, and
And the show doesn't do
and
anything with that. Like it just like it's an idea that's like brought up, and then we got to go do a crime subplot as like the primary driving force because of the financial situation. It's like that is just. I'd rather like a Spider-Man ground level figure who's trying to figure out what it means to be this character and the weight of this iconography,
yeah.
but have a different standard for success in changing the world. That's interesting to me. That's something with a character.
Agreed. And also, I'll put this out there. Like, if you look at statistics on what startups, VC companies invest in, right, and how many startups are that have black people as CEOs, right, men or women, and it's like, oh, like so few. There's clearly like systemic imbalances there, and it's like that would if that's the approach you want to go in, that's an interesting approach to explore. Of course, like it's a show in the Marvel universe where things need to go blow up and stuff, and so it's like they're not going to like dive into that. But I don't even think they don't even like get close enough to that issue to even refer to it, really, in my opinion. And so that's my issue. But the point I was making, Patrick, is you want to have these like splinter shows with side characters like Ironheart and Echo or whoever, but by definition, or because of the way the MCU is structured, it can't be necessarily world-altering stakes. Because if it's a world-altering stakes, it would be a movie, right? It would be like, oh, you need to turn out to the theater to see that one. So instead, they need to deal with mundane issues. And structurally, one of the only mundane issues that they have to deal with is money. And then, in my opinion, it generally makes no sense, right? And then, obviously, as a result of the money needs, she's making these horrible decisions that the audience knows are bad. Like, hey, Anthony Ramos presenting himself like, hey, yeah, we do like breaking and entering, extortion, but don't worry, no one's gonna get hurt. And Riri is like, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. It's just like, okay, like the audience is so far ahead of the characters in this situation where it's Riri Williams, you're making terrible decisions. It's for implausible reasons. Hard for me to get over that as a viewer. Just like on a premise level, it's hard for me to kind of get over it and enjoy the show for what it is. All that said, and that is a lot. So there's these heists that happen, right? So okay, I will say, Natalie, kind of an annoying character, but also it's cool that it's a cool concept of you're talking with your dead AI friend that was created from a brain map of yourself. Like I like that.
When that are subconscious developed that like
right.
She falls asleep as the brain mapping happens, wakes up to find her, and clearly if she was like conscious, awake, making a decision, would not have had this be the representation of this AI. But the fact that what your brain, what your heart spoke to was this person that you lost, that's a really, what would you, because that is an extension of, when this show was being like written in production, we hadn't quite hit, like, this is way before like ChatGPT and chatbots like hit the mainstream, right? So they're pressing on something that could have been very prescient in Ironheart, which is like I want to tell you that like if I lost someone really close to me and I could hit a magic button and talk to them, I would not do that because that seems gross and wrong. If you slid that button in front of me and just said all you had to do was press it, I think a lot of people would press the button and find like a mixed sense of catharsis in that. But there's, at least at this point in the show, it doesn't explore like the complicated emotions one would feel as a result of being a genius that can essentially summon someone from the dead to get emotional closure. And it's like, that's a cool idea, but like the show doesn't spend a lot of time really dealing with that, at least in the episodes we've seen.
There's a lot that's done to make it so Riri isn't even responsible for a lot of the biggest actions in the show, right?
Yeah.
So creating her AI friend Natalie, the end of episode 3, there's a big moment where she kind of kills a guy, right? She kind of like involved, but like it's not even presented as an affirmative decision that she made, right? It's presented as, oh, the suit's here. I got to get in the suit and get out of here. And then like she just leaves the guy to die. And then only later
Sue probably could have like bashed the door a couple of times.
Oh, totally, totally. Like the suit could have been like, hey, do we leave that guy behind? But she doesn't get any moment to even act on the. She doesn't have like agency in the situation. So it's really bizarre, in my opinion, that they don't give her control over these huge decisions that she makes, so to speak. So anyway, the gang, the Hoods gang, right? This kind of cool, kind of cheesy a little bit, but like, hey, they have good they seem to enjoy hanging out, and so therefore like we kind of enjoy hanging out with them a little bit as well, right?
Yeah, they all like very distinctive, like sort of
personalities,
like
right?
personalities.
Yeah.
And yet I couldn't name like a single character's name.
Wow. You mean you can't remember Slug, Roz, and Jerry, and Clown?
Yeah, I can see your eyes looking at a page. don't lie to me. That's not off the dome.
That's off the dome. That's off the top of my head, Patrick. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's one of the strange parts about like a show that has the luxury of extra time, and yet I don't feel like it ends up getting spent in like, how does that not end up getting spent in a way where I feel like I could like tell you the different sort of like identities of the different characters, because the show kind of relies on that a lot to sort of signal who they are, but we don't really get a ton of time to actually. There's almost too many characters in the gang. I almost wish there was like half of them, and that you got to spend a little more time with them. But they're visually distinctive, but as characters, they're extremely shallow thus far.
Well, in episode 2, to get the equipment that she needs, Riri tracks down somebody who lives near her named Joe, just like a random dude, who happened to buy some of the materials she needed on the black market. We then follow Riri and the Hood's crew as they head out on a heist of Sheila Zarate's company, Tunnel. They successfully execute the heist and force Zarate to make them employees and give them all lots of money, but Riri is bothered when a security guard gets horribly injured / killed in the process. Now, Patrick, I am convinced that the people who make these shows don't know how money works in the real world. Like, it's like when you go and ask if you were to ask a presidential candidate, hey, how much is a gallon of milk? Some of them might not know the answer. This is very, very silly. I mean, in the American legal system, there is this concept called duress, where you cannot make people sign contracts under duress, or else the contract is null and void. Anyway, I know it's silly to like expect legal rigor from a show like this, but this plus the idea that Riri can't find somebody to invest in her, she's literally like one of the smartest people on the planet. She can't find someone to invest in her stuff, and it's like, okay, this is very, very silly and dumb. That their plan is, hey, we corner them and then threaten to kill them unless they sign a document. Like, there's a reason people aren't doing this all the time in real life, Patrick. It's because this doesn't make any goddamn sense. Okay.
Well, and if the sequence itself isn't interesting enough to justify the silliness either, right? Like, I can go a long way with the silliness of a scene. I can walk with you if like the spectacle is worth it, and like it's not, and the characters aren't like interesting enough to justify it. And like that's the weird part that the show I think runs into over and over is like, all right, like I'm willing to really forgive a lot, but like in service of what? And it's the in service of what that I find the show is often lacking on. Because I'm with you, like that scene, like what? Like, sure, just say yes, girl. Then get out of that car.
Get out of it and call your lawyer.
Go to your lawyer and your security team. Be like, of course we're not going to do. Like, does she have an app on her phone that like extends 401k benefits to like a random set of people? Also, I guess they said was going to be under pseudonyms, but I don't know. That feels. You want to be paid through the actual like company system? Like, you want like a direct deposit to go out?
You don't have like Swiss bank account. Like at
Well,
least
they
ask,
do-
at least ask for the money in crypto form. You know,
something. I mean, Riri does make a crack about it. It's one of the funnier lines in one of the early episodes where she's like, how do we get paid? Like,
Right.
is it like a direct deposit? Like, that is, that's
and then
funny.
later
they
they're
don't
dancing,
actually answer that
they're
though.
dancing
Like, they don't
around with the money. It's like, so what the fuck? It all makes no sense. But the I just want to make sure I finish off my point from earlier,
Sure,
Patrick, which is like
yes.
structurally, I think these shows are screwed because you need to have characters solving much smaller problems, and it just feels really trivial, right? Riri's money problem just feels very trivial compared to blue beam in sky that's going to end the universe, or
leave her in school. Leave her in school. Like, I thought, like, the tensions there of like being a student who has like ambitions of changing the world. Like, keep her like a street level Spider-Man. Like, I actually think there's like you could have gotten away with a lot. Like, in the constraints of just being a young girl who, man, in the same way that like Peter Parker in the MCU like is introduced by, like, we could have like skip over street level Peter Parker, like, and jump straight into meeting Tony Stark and being part of the Avengers, and just the nature how like the licensing worked out, how Spider-Man got introduced to that world. But like, there's like Ironheart could have been different. Could have been like, you're a student, but you're also thinking about, goddamn, like, I fought with the Wakandans on like a battleship and like fought against undersea creatures. And like, I gotta hit like a deadline, like, and like
I
a
gotta
GPA.
write this term paper on Friday.
Like, that's relatable shit.
I mean, look at Gen V. I thought did a great job. Right?
I agree.
Great show. Did a great job of like, what is it like for superheroes to deal, like people who have some gifts to deal with being in college, basically. I really like that show. Anyway,
also she flew the fuck into Chicago on an Iron Man suit. Like, what? Nobody tracked her down. Like, the news isn't interested. Like,
yeah, no worries about that. No worries about that. But I think that these heist scenes violate the one rule, or don't take advantage of the one benefit of heist movies and scenes, which is that you need to take time to explain what the heist is going to be.
Yeah.
Like,
there's a montage for a reason, David.
There's the whole pleasure of a heist movie or scene is you explain, here's what we're going to try to do, like step by step. Like, first we need to get into this, then we need to do this. Now, they did some of that. I'm not saying like they didn't do any of it, but it's like it could have been done more successfully, so that you actually anticipate. So there's actually some tension. There's no tension in any of these heist scenes, and it's a problem. All right. In episode 3, we find out that Joe and Riri kind of team up. Joe is so inspired by Riri blackmailing him that he decides to blackmail her back. And they get together, and Riri wants to modify Joe's biomesh to make some advanced cloaking materials. And while she's pawing through his belongings, she drops a bag of ashes belonging to Obadiah S. We then learn that Joel's real name is Ezekiel Stane, Obadiah Stane's son. Obadiah Stane being the villain from the original Iron Man movie played by Jeff Bridges. Wow. Huge reveal. Huge reveal.
Not that, no, it wasn't. And I enjoyed that. I'm not even being like jokey. Like, if you're gonna do, like, who cares if like Mr. Stone from Iron Man 1 had a, you know what I mean? Like, Stane, yes. Had a kid. Like, that's a fun, I found that to be like a fun, loose connection to explain why this character has access to this stuff. Now, granted, I have a soft spot for this actor. I feel like sold so fucking short because of Solo, which I think got a lot of people to prejudge this actor. And I thought he was fine.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, thought he was like completely fine in like a deeply mediocre film, but like has done a lot of really good work. And the effortless charisma that he has shown in other projects, I think, is present here. And the deepest chemistry, more than Riri and Natalie have with one another, like, is between Riri and Ezekiel. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Every time they're on screen together, I want a show where they're on screen
it's like,
together.
This is
the show.
This could work, you know? Yeah.
Imagine if they're walking down the hallway at MIT, and like they run into each other, and she drops her little like suit arm, and he's got his books, and like, what are you doing with these weird weapons? Like, will they? Won't they? You know, like there's so much.
To be fair, as the show points out, he's like a good 10 years older than her. But
I'm just saying there is an enormous amount of potential between the two of them. It doesn't have to necessarily be romantic in quality. It is. The actors have an instant chemistry. The characters and like where they exist in their world like is interesting, and it just feels like the show is just in such a rush to get away from that in service of a bunch of other stuff that I find. What's up with the cloak? Like, I don't care. But the show cares a lot. Episode, like, we're gonna get episode 3. The show cares a lot about this cloak.
Yeah. To the point where Riri needs to hatch some extremely elaborate plan where they go on the height, and then it's like, oh, you need to bring. It's like, why can't you just cut off the cloak piece? Like, literally, like one of the characters walks in wearing it. It's like, if you really wanted a piece of it, like that wasn't a good.
It's sitting around. There are ample opportunities.
But no, we need to go into the heist, into this place where literally you cannot bring in any foreign objects, or else they will be detected. And so, yeah, it's pretty silly. And then of course at the end, she accidentally kills a guy indirectly by omission, and then like is having a mental breakdown of it. And then we also see Anthony Ramos very upset that his cousin has died because he's been left behind on the heist. What a weird heist that one was. I'm just gonna say that, like, it was a weird one, between Anthony Ramos and like he like turns invisible and starts taking out guys, and the guy inside has like a plastic gun because they can't bring in foreign objects into the place, right? So he has some kind of polymer. The CEO he's trying to extort has some kind of polymer weapon, and it's just like, and then everyone starts breathing in CO2. It's just a very odd one,
There's a lot going on. Like,
there's a lot going on.
And like, pick a lane, Heist. Like, make one of these things dramatic. I feel like the hood powers come out of nowhere. It's all of a sudden I'm look up, I'm like, I was like, he's invisible? Like, did we bring that? Did we have?
To be fair, he did say, "Hey, I'm unstoppable" with his hood on.
Okay, I think,
and also, he has been almost completely useless as a character until this point, because like
true.
The last heist he did and then the previous heist where they're all breaking in to the building or whatever, like, where was Anthony Ramos then? He was like debriefing with them afterward. It's like, dude, I think you could have helped out a little bit more on that. Anyway, so whatever. So okay, at the end of episode 3, right? What else remains for this show to accomplish? I think hoping the Obadiah Stane stuff goes somewhere. Like, maybe their relationship develops a little bit more. Maybe we find out a little bit more about what it was like to grow up under Jeff Bridges. That kind of thing. We need to wait for Riri Williams to discover what we already know and knew probably about an hour and a half ago, which is that you shouldn't work for Anthony Ramos in this movie, or this show, I should say. Seems like a bad idea. And so that's got to be a whole thing. And then presumably she's going to have some deep-seated emotional catharsis around the death of her stepfather and her friend, and figure out a way to resolve all of that.
Well, I wonder if the resolution is that, like, Natalie, quote, dies, or like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some sort of like,
she turns Natalie off for good,
something like that, where it's like, this doesn't make sense, as I don't know, like that feels like how you bring closure to, how do you say goodbye? If you could say goodbye to someone, even if it was performative, and not the quote real person, like, would that bring you some sort of real life? And if they hit a couple of those notes, I think there's I hope they find some interesting notes to hit on some of that material. It just feels like, hey, there's 6 episodes, halfway in, we're still getting teases about the real villain. It's like, okay, like, are we even going to know who that is by the end of the 4th? episode. So where are we
Right.
going to have time for Ezekiel,
Yeah.
and where are we going to have time for Natalie? And even Riri's mom seems like a potentially interesting character, given the tensions the two of them have over the fact that she doesn't call home or talk about this loss that they both experienced. And I just, it's, hour-long episodes or not, it just does not seem like the show it knows what to focus on. It doesn't have a focus. It has a bunch of different plots kind of happening at the same time. And the through line between them is just a bunch of interesting actors, I think, given some really poor material to work with.
Completely agree, Patrick Klepek. Closing thoughts. I want to just throw a couple shout outs to stuff that I thought was pretty cool in the show. First of all, we get a shot that pans through the streets of, I think it's Chicago at the time. And there's like a street preacher who says, Thanos was just the beginning. And I like the idea of Thanos inspiring, religious fundamentalists of saying like you thought Thanos was bad, like other bad things are coming. Have you seen the trailer for Fantastic Four? I like the idea of this, like the characters in the MCU doing things that resonate beyond the movie.
Well, that's good world building, right?
Yeah,
like I feel
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, like I think one thing there's an the interconnectedness was a novelty in like that first 10 years of the MCU leading up to Infinity War and Endgame. And I think something that was not felt as much in the phases afterwards was not that every movie needed to be about the blip, like the disappearance of all these people, but show me consequences in the world.
Absolutely.
And the idea that like Thanos would inspire a religion or an ideology that like Thanos was right, of course that would happen. And so even just little, it doesn't have to be a whole episode, but like little asides that just show the benefit of having connective tissue. I think you're really right to point that out, because that made me smile as it happened. And I was like, I wish these shows had, more stuff like that.
Well, another moment is when it's revealed that the official cover story for Obadiah Stane was that he died in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alden Ehrenreich's character reveals that, that's a cover story. That's not actually true. I am curious how they explained who was the ironmonger wandering through the streets and like who that, what was the cover story for that. But whatever, like I just like the idea that, hey, they needed to acknowledge how did the universe deal with the death of Obadiah Stane? And so that was also explained. I appreciate that as well. But anyway, there's some cool touches. And, despite the fact that we spent most of the time of this review complaining about the show, it is not the worst MCU show out there. It's not even close, in my opinion.
It's totally serviceable.
Innocuous is how I would describe it.
Yes.
Cromulent. It's perfectly fine. It is not a bad show, right? There are bad shows. Secret Invasion is a bad show. I would argue Falcon and Winter Soldier is a high ambition but bad show. This is not a bad show. It's fine. It's something you put on and it's fine. Could have been a lot better because of how much talent's behind it. It looks great. Dominic Thorne's great. Like a lot of potential that probably, based on what we've seen so far, will not be fulfilled. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.